Hello, David.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's 5:45 p.m. here in LA. It's dark. What is it in New Zealand? What time?
It's 2:45 in the afternoon.
Okay, so just quickly, for some context of who you are, we are not like super close friends, but we have known each other forever. You have your own podcast, which I love. I was just wondering if you could explain the premise of that, because I think it's worth people hearing about if they don't know already.
Yeah, so me and my friend Guy Montgomery, we do sort of a movie review podcast, but the hook is that the movie very rarely changes. So we watched Grown Ups 2 and reviewed it for an entire year, week after week. And then we did that with Sex and the City 2 and Sex and the City 1 and a movie called We Are Your Friends, which was an unsuccessful star vehicle for Zac Efron.
What's it like watching the same film and reviewing the same film 52 weeks in a row?
It's deeply fascinating because you start sort of tearing yourself apart and it gets very navel-gazy very quick. And you think the movie is changing, but of course that's absurd. So what you're actually noticing is yourself changing week to week. So it's quite meditative and maddening are the two words I would use.
Now, the podcast I make is about American culture, and this week we're focusing on New Zealand comedian and actor Rhys Darby, who's sort of ingratiated himself into American culture. You know, he's in The X-Files, he's in movies with Jim Carrey, and you're a comedian, and I'm just wondering, from a New Zealand perspective, I was just wondering if you could kind of explain who Rhys Darby is and what your take is on him.
Who is Rhys Darby? What a wonderful question. He's a beloved figure in New Zealand. Well, he's part of a generation of comedic talent in New Zealand that didn't have a lot of examples of people who were able to leave the gravity of New Zealand, but he did in a major way by sheer force of being so bloody funny. So obviously Flight of the Conchords is the thing that introduced him to an international audience. But before he was known around the world, anyone who cared about comedy in New Zealand absolutely adored and revered the man. But there is this funny thing in New Zealand where the general public are not interested really in anything from New Zealand, be it film, comedy, or music, until America has deigned that thing good. And then we get on board. So now everyone's allowed to love Rhys Darby, which is nice.
I'm David Farrier, a New Zealander accidentally marooned in America, and I want to figure out what makes this country tick. Now, I have to admit, despite getting to make the show with my handsome, wonderful friend Robert, sometimes I feel outnumbered and metaphorically outgunned by Americans. Sometimes I yearn for the sweet sound of a New Zealand accent, where words come out differently and we're not destined to say maths incorrectly. Sure, I call one of my long-suffering friends when we start the episode each week, but sometimes I want more. I want more New Zealand. So this week, I decided I wanted to get another New Zealander who is living in America on the show, someone who's chosen to make America their home. One of them happens to have inserted himself into American pop culture like no other New Zealander, appearing in The X-Files, Bob's Burgers, The Simpsons, and acting alongside people like The Rock and Jim Carrey. And in all of this, somehow, he's managed to keep his New Zealand accent, paving the way for annoying voices like mine to be accepted here. So, get ready to hear multiple New Zealand accents in this episode, because this is the Rhys Darby episode.
Flightless, flightless, flightless bird touchdown in America. I'm a flightless bird touchdown in America.
Do you think it was a little insulting to tell Tim that you guys weren't super close friends?
Oh, something about New Zealand is honesty, you know? And I just want to say, I don't want to say, hey, my old friend Tim, you know, it's David. I want to be like, you know.
Old friend is a pretty, that's not a huge commitment.
I feel No.
But what
like,
if he was like, David and I are
heartbroken?
great friends, and he just said we're not super good
I
friends?
I actually never thought of the context of what I'd said. It is quite a potentially mean thing to say to
A
someone.
little bit.
Why did I say?
Kinda,
Why
yeah.
did I say that to Tim? Why didn't I just say, Tim, it's Dave?
I think you owe Tim an apology, potentially.
When I worked in a newsroom in New Zealand, I had a list up on my little wall where my little computer was, and I'd have a list of friends and colleagues, and I'd move people around in the newsroom depending on how I felt about them that week.
You let people see it? This
Yeah,
was on
it was
public
public.
display?
It was public, and they'd swap. Like if someone wronged me in some way that I perceived, I'd like shift them into the colleagues, and if they were good to me, back into friends. So it's a little bit like that.
That sounds so catty. Did anyone actually pay attention to it? Or was
People
this...
loved it.
Okay, so
Yeah,
this
no, it
wasn't
was
just
great.
some like weird thing that Davey does.
Oh, I mean, David. It's amazing when you call me Davey how much I
quickly.
bristle. I can feel like everything in me bristling, and I say I want to fight.
Yeah, just fully throws you off course too.
No, it does. Okay, so Tim Batt is a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
and
it seemed
I'm
like it.
Sorry, Tim. We've known each other forever. Why did I say that?
I've heard of him and his podcast from you.
Thanks for calling that out.
Yeah.
And Tim, I apologize.
You've moved him from acquaintance
Yeah,
to
he's
the
an
friend
acquaintance
column.
to close friend.
Okay.
His show, I forgot to mention, it's called The Worst Idea of All Time, and it is one of the funniest shows I've ever, podcasts I've ever heard. I love it. Rhys Darby,
Yes.
I'm curious if you're at all familiar with, like, say, Flight of the Conchords. Did you watch that show?
Yeah, I love that show. That show had such a massive cultural significance when it aired.
So that was in your life.
So the weird thing is, I was realizing as you guys were talking about it is I knew it was New Zealand, but I didn't connect. I've never connected it to you. Like that was before David.
Yeah, totally.
My context of New Zealand.
It kind of makes sense. And the thing that I hadn't thought about until I was thinking about this episode is that it was kind of about New Zealanders in America out of like fish out of water going, this is such a weird country.
And they also have flight in the title. Like,
oh my God,
we do. Yeah, about birds.
That's actually
Conchord's a bird, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So we inadvertently
basically like ripped off the HBO show. Yeah, I love that show a lot. Do you know Rhys's other? So Rhys was obviously, he was the Murray character in the show. So he was the manager. He like worked out of the NZ consulate. He had always had like funny New Zealand posters on the wall. Was
that character like very, very Rhys? Like, because it seemed heavily improvised. It seemed
totally
like just an extension of his own goofiness.
Yeah, and I feel like, I think it's fair to say there's like a lot of his characters are based in certain elements of him.
Yeah.
And that particular character I hadn't seen before. Like he's got a few different characters he does in his stand-up. Like he does this like park ranger character who's really funny, but Murray, the like hapless manager, it's like a new character, but it's still Rhys. That is Rhys that you're seeing. And that's kind of what's amazing about him is he pops up in all these different shows and films here, but he's always like, oh, that's Rhys. Like somehow he's got this ability. He's acting, but he's also just being himself, which is such an unusual. Like, are there many other actors that do that? That are just them? I'm trying to think.
I mean, yeah.
The Rock. The Rock's kind of one of them. He is literally the
and
same
like
character
John
in every
Cena.
film. Cena's the same. Wrestlers, basically.
Yeah, it's just there's got to be more than that, though. I mean, the good ones are just kind of versions of themselves on all.
Pretty much, right?
And I mean, you've got that route, and then you've got the like Daniel Day-Lewis route.
Yeah,
of, like,
method acting. Christian
method
Bale.
acting.
Yeah, completely changing everything about themselves.
Yeah, and then you just have the like people trying to do things not as well.
If you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, oh my God, there's all these actors that they're not talking about right now, email us. It's flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com. We'd love to hear.
There's a lot. I think we should acknowledge that there's a lot.
I just know there'll be such obvious ones that we're missing. We'll hear from people.
Should we sit and think about it for a little bit?
Just in silence?
Yeah.
We'll remember the second we leave this room.
Yeah,
that's when it's going to happen.
Oh, Kieran Culkin. He is like, and Jesse Eisenberg. Like both of them are very much seemingly extensions of their real personalities.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they're doing more of a shift. No, you're right, though. They're very clearly them. Tom Cruise? No, Tom Cruise is different. You watch him in Collateral versus Mission Impossible versus Magnolia. Very different people.
I feel like what Tom Cruise has done is he has turned himself into this action hero that he was playing on screen, and then it's like evolved into that's Tom now.
That's Tom. And that's part of this whole world of Scientology that's like pushed him into this space, I reckon.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, which I've never seen. I need to. Still haven't seen it. Quick bit of housekeeping. And this is exciting. We've been talking about this for a while. We're going to do a live show of this podcast, Flightless Bird Live. We've got one date lined up. It's February 8th in Seattle at the Neptune Theatre.
Do you know what state Seattle's in?
No idea.
Seattle, Washington.
Is it Washington? We're going to Washington.
Can you tell me where
it's
on the
up.
map? Up?
It's up. It's north.
Yep.
We've been there before.
Yes, we have.
We're going back years ago.
We went there with Bill Gates.
Bill. That was weird. February 8th in Seattle, Neptune Theatre. Tickets are on sale now. I've just put the link in my bio on Instagram, which is at David Farrier. So if you go there, bio, links, tickets are there. Grab them now. I'm excited. It'll be fun to be in the room with people. We'll have some merch with us.
Yeah, and I think for the live show, we're going to try to play with format a little bit. So it's not necessarily going to be just what we're doing right now.
Well, I think both of us are aware of, like, I think when we go to live shows, we want something that's like, that fits the live environment, I guess. And so we're thinking of some fun things. But mainly, I don't know, I just think, I love the idea of taking something out from a studio and having something in the real world. I just get very excited about that. And it's nice to meet people.
We'll see how I feel about being on a stage doing this.
I'm curious. Yeah. I mean, I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it. I think it's going to go to your head and you're going to become like absolutely insufferable. And I can't wait for it. All right. Are you ready to learn a bit more about Mr. Rhys Darby?
Let's do it.
It's about 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and I'm sitting around the kitchen table with Rhys and Rosie Darby.
I'm Rosie Carnahan Darby. I work as a talent manager. And yeah, I was going to say something smart then, but I won't.
There's a dog, Marley, looking up to me for food and scratches. And Gizmo the cat is sitting on the table, also demanding food and scratches.
Rhys Darby, I guess cultural icon would be, actor, comedian, entertainer. Yeah. Right.
Person that does the cat litter.
I mean, around the house, definitely the guy that, I mean, I don't know if you can call them man jobs, but anything that's shit, that's what I'll do, including shit. Like I will deal with the dog shit, the kitty litter, and the trash, and also a bit of plumbing work now and again.
Right now, there's a lot of kitty litter in this house because there's also another cat, Bumbles, plus they're also fostering a bunch of kittens, James, Kippy, Batman, and Caesar. I've known Rhys and Rosie for almost 2 decades now, and like me, they're big into the animals. Rhys reckons he got it from his dad.
Yeah, didn't he have a horse at one moment? He was living in a residential area, but out the back of his house, on the back lawn, there was just a horse. I said, what's happening with this? And he went, oh, yeah, that was a stray, because he just feeds animals. So some people, they just attract animals, and my dad was one of those. So he had birds, so many cats, and obviously he trained and raced greyhounds for 25 years.
This is a bit like my dad, Alistair. Growing up, he was a veterinarian, so we always had an assortment of random animals in the house. We didn't have a horse on the back lawn, but at one point we had ducks in the bathtub and a recovering hedgehog in the lounge. Oh, and I had my pet goat, Frisky. Rhys currently has 2 goats back in New Zealand.
I've got a history of raising young animals. During the pandemic, of course, I brought 2 goats up. They were 2 weeks old, and I bottle-fed young Barney and Fred back in New Zealand. My dad was a vet, and so we grew up with a million animals as well, and we had a pet goat because my dad also weirdly loved hunting. He loved animals, but he loved hunting. And he went out and shot some goats and didn't realize there was a kid there, and so bought this little orphaned goat back, and that was Frisky. And Frisky was like my best friend for years. They're the funniest fucking creatures. They're so weird. They're so funny, and I think that's the thing, is that they're just so weird and bizarre and smart and goofy. They suit me to a T.
Before you come at my dad for shooting a goat, wild goats are pests in New Zealand, which isn't a great thing for our environment. Plus, that was like 30 years ago. When I was driving over here, it kind of hit me. I feel like I've been interviewing you, Rhys, for just way too long now. I was thinking like the maths when I first interviewed you when I was working at TV3 in New Zealand would have probably been almost 20. Was it 20? I just checked while I was writing this script, and it was 16 years ago. It was in this weird boardroom, and I said, I had that question, a really great question for you. Where do you get your ideas? God, I looked up the story that aired on our late night news in New Zealand. It's really hard for me to watch, watching a young version of myself that sounds a lot like me, but also not like me.
He's recently wrapped a movie with Jim Carrey, but right now he's back in New Zealand, and David Farrier caught up for a chat.
It's been a busy year for Rhys Darby, known by many these days as Murray.
New Zealand Consulate, Murray Hewitt speaking.
His role as manager for Flight of the Conchords has thrown him into the limelight like never before.
Where does that come from?
How did I come up with that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
It's an elaborate way of saying, how do you come up with your ideas? But you almost got me there, but it's a hack question.
So that was 15 and a half years ago.
I was just thinking it's kind of insane. It's just a strange thing.
Well, it's that, but also time has flown. We've had similar trajectories in terms of like getting out of New Zealand, but really caring about New Zealand. And I think we run into each other a lot because we go to similar do's and things. And, you know, and New Zealand is 2 degrees of separation. So we all know each other anyway. So it's, it's not a huge shock to me that once again, Farrier's round at my place interviewing me.
Just some background. When I interviewed Rhys 15 years ago, we ended up becoming friends. He's the guy I did my first ever podcast with. It was called The Cryptid Factor. It was me, him, and our other friend Leon. And we mostly just talked about cryptozoology and UFOs and had on guest stars like Taika Waititi.
At the moment, we don't have a title for it, but it's called, our sort of tentative title is What We Do in the Shadows. And it's a documentary about vampires, about 3 vampires who flat in Wellington.
But see, vampires, werewolves, that's all cryptozoological. There's people believe in vampires, werewolves.
That was over a decade ago now. And the Cryptid Factor is still going strong, and it's better. I got replaced by a guy called Dan Schreiber, basically a better version of me.
And so we're really good friends, and it's a matter of just like, when can we do another one? And then when we do, we have an absolute blast. And you can see that, and that's why the fans love it, because you've got 3 people that are just enjoying each other's company. It doesn't really matter what we're talking about.
I digress. The reason I was first interviewing Rhys Darby back in 2008 was that the comedian had just been cast in a relatively new TV show called Flight of the Conchords. It was essentially about 2 New Zealand musicians in America, out of their depth, trying to come to terms with what America was all about. Rhys Darby played their manager, Murray, who worked out of the New Zealand embassy.
Item 1, fan base. Ways to increase the American fan base.
What fan base?
The fan base of the band.
Well, you mean Mel? That's not a fan base, that's just a woman.
Yeah, but I'm calling it fan base from now on. It's just easier when I call. Because, you say, oh, the fan will be there. Just, they can tell there's only one person. I'm trying to make it look bigger.
Do you remember the first time you ever came to America?
Yep. Flight of the Conchords. That was my very first time. We landed in 8 foot of snow in New York in February, and I'd never been here.
Flight of the Conchords is sort of a who's who of talented New Zealanders. People like Taika Waititi, Brett McKenzie, and Jermaine Clement. If you haven't seen it, it's on Max, or just Google it. Back in the early 2000s, they'd tried to make the show in New Zealand, but no one would fund it, basically saying who'd want to watch a show about that. So they went to America and made it there instead.
I'd never been to America before, and I flew straight into JFK, and they put me up in a really fancy hotel downtown, and I was excited. I was amongst the incredibly tall buildings that you see on television, We made the pilot for the show, and I love watching that episode 1, which is the thing we shot back then, and how young I look and how bushy my hair is, and
He is wild.
yeah, my big thick goatee, and the other two just really young as well, Brett and Jermaine, and then you can see the three of us excited with the prospect of making a television show in America with HBO, with American money. We really felt like, yeah, I mean, I certainly did, that I'd won a lottery.
You bought our little camera that we had bought when we had our first kid. And all of the photos on this digital camera when you got back from shooting the pilot were of like the trailers and the crew and cameras, because it was like all so new. And that's what I wanted to see. I didn't care about the picture of the Statue of Liberty, which you didn't take, because that was your first television show. It was this new world. It was crazy.
The show was a hit. I think just because it leaned so hard into how low-key and strange New Zealanders can be, especially when brushing up against loud, brash Americans. It also helped that Flight of the Conchords, the fictional band in the show, were also just a really good band.
You're so beautiful.
For me, I think The Most Beautiful Girl in the Room and Inner City Pressure are my faves.
Inner city life, inner city pressure, the concrete world.
The pilot was on MySpace. So everyone in the world got to see the pilot, which was genius marketing. So that was, MySpace was the big hit thing. It was the new thing. And so we put the pilot on that, and then it was just like shared around, and everyone's like, oh, wow, this show's cool. I thought it was obviously funny because the guys are great. The music's brilliant. I could see it coming together, and Taika was involved as well. And so I knew, that it was cool and it was going to be good, but I didn't know how much of an impact it would have culturally and in the comedy world. So we're back in the UK. I started getting recognised from MySpace and from Americans coming over, and it was on HBO. That was the difference. It's such a huge, giant channel. Their slogans was, we're not television, we're HBO.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turns out they were just television.
At this point, they were pretty glad New Zealand hadn't wanted the show because now they were on HBO. For Rhys, who'd been living in London, the place most New Zealanders seem to flood to, this was his big break into America.
Season 1 did well, and then we're living in Tooting in London, and when I get the phone call from Peyton Reed, and he said, I'm making a movie with Jim Carrey, and I want you in it. And I'm just like, hold my beer. I think I just said that to a random guy on the street. Why I'm drinking on the street, I don't know. Things were not great. I remember walking through a graveyard just crying, thinking, why am I walking through a graveyard? Well, it was in Tooting. We lived near a graveyard. But this was it. I was like, this is my big break. And only 5 years earlier, I'd said to my agent, and he said, what's your big aspiration? If you had one dream, what would it be? And I said, well, it would be to work with Jim Carrey, because I idolized him. And then here's my first movie, working alongside him.
Over the course of a few days, they packed up and left London for America, this time to make Yes Man with Jim Carrey.
Wow, cool costume, my man.
The only one they had left was for toddlers. This is Allison, and her wand made from a sequoia.
Hi.
You must be Norman.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Back then, it was crazy to hear a New Zealand accent in this big American movie. And somehow, Rhys was just able to keep doing this.
Yeah, it's just a completely different country. But look, I'm not changing myself.
It is remarkable how you've kept your essence of who you are. Not many people get to do that. You're doing all these different roles, but you're still bringing such strong elements of yourself and New Zealand to them.
I live in my own world. And I've always felt like an alien, no matter where I am. Even back home, I feel like, I was dropped out of space. So that's what's kept me being me. Me and some characters. I'm going to always be laid back. I'm always going to have that eye of the outsider that I don't quite belong here. My voice is famous here now, and this is the accent. And it's kind of like, yeah, this guy. And I'm just here kind of observing. And you're doing the same thing. And I think that feels good because I'm not going to be roped into something that I don't really want to be part of.
And he means that too, because despite living here with his wife and kids, he hasn't gone for citizenship yet. He wants to keep that feeling of being like a bit of an alien. Rosie, on the other hand, has made the jump.
I'm an American citizen now, so...
You have done,
yeah.
But you did that so you could vote, and that was courageous, and now our kids both have American passports, and I just said, if you're going overseas, don't use them. Let's wait and see what the world's like in about a year's time.
I really admire what Rhys and Rosie have done, managing to sort of crack America, something I feel I'll probably never be able to do.
I do genuinely feel jealous looking at you sometimes because you have inserted yourself into some of the biggest bits of American pop culture as well. Like you getting that role in the X-Files, Star Trek is coming up. It is crazy that you as this Kiwi, you are inserting yourselves into these, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't pause long enough to really think about it, but with the Star Trek one of my friends back home went, okay, so you're just one of the guys in red that's going to die straight away. And I said, no, I'm actually a really interesting character. I can't reveal it now, but it's going to be great. And so, yeah, I think that what people see in me is that alien thing, but also I guess it's just a really unique talent that needs to be in things. And they're all otherworldly things too, by the way. You know, X-Files, this, even Jumanji, I'm inside trapped in some weird video game that's possibly another dimension, and it kind of makes sense. So yeah, I'm really proud that I've been able to do those things.
Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Support for Flightless Bird comes from Aura Frames. Now, let's be honest here. What most people really want for the holidays is to see their favorite people more often. That's why this year, the best gift you can give, besides plane tickets, is an Aura digital picture frame. Named the #1 digital photo frame by Wirecutter, Aura frames are incredibly smart and easy to use, allowing you to upload unlimited photos and videos directly from your phone to the frame. Plus, you can order the frame online and preload it with photos and videos using the Aura app, so it's ready to go for the person you're giving it to right out of the box. I've talked about this a lot, but I got my parents one of these things, and they love it. I send new photos through to the frame, they get them, they love them. They feel like they're keeping up with my life, which is really nice. Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames by using the promo code BIRD at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code BIRD. This deal is exclusive to listeners of this show, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Quince. Now, finding the perfect gift can be pretty overwhelming. I always want to make sure I'm giving gifts that people actually want and aren't gonna wince at. This year, I found the perfect spot for timeless gifts made from premium materials. You've got to check out Quince. Quince lets you treat your loved ones and yourself to true high quality at an affordable price. Something everyone needs in their closet. In my opinion, Quince's iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at $50. Their super soft fleece sweatpants are now a major upgrade to whatever you're lounging in right now, I assure you. And their package puffer jackets, I have one of these, are perfect for anyone who's traveling for the holidays. And it's getting cold in LA at the moment. No matter what you're looking for, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, Quince passes the savings on to you. Basically, Quince is on the nice list. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. It's a great place to get gifts for Christmas. So yeah, as for me, I got the puffer jacket, love that. The sweatpants I highly recommend, and I have a bunch of shorts that I use for hiking. Gift luxury this holiday season without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/bird for 365-day returns, plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/bird to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/bird.
It's been sort of surreal watching Rhys go and do all this stuff. Back in New Zealand in 2014 or so, he cast me in this New Zealand TV show, Short Poppies, my one and only acting job. I played a version of myself, a journalist looking into small-town New Zealand.
Hey, sweetie. Oh,
Rod.
Sorry, Linda.
What are you doing?
No, I didn't know you. Changed her hair. That's my sister. Oh.
Is this like a reality show?
No, it's more of a documentary. We're just following around ordinary New Zealanders.
Not really ordinary, dude. Maybe go for Pete. He's more your ordinary kind of guy.
The entire premise of the show was based around a strange part of New Zealand's psychological makeup.
The original idea comes from the term tall poppy syndrome, which if you guys haven't heard it that are listening, look it up. It's about the idea that if you stick your head out in a small population area, people will look at you strangely. And this happens in New Zealand because it's basically a village of 5 million. And I've heard stories of like the Irish saying they have a similar thing. Now here in America, they just can't understand what that is. You know, everyone should stick their heads out and be confident and try and succeed. So I wanted to look at the fact that short poppies are basically everyone else in New Zealand. So it was everyone going about their normal jobs. And I wanted to show that even, let's say, ordinary people, or whoever these people were that I portrayed, they are weird as well. And they are confident within themselves and are bizarre. And so I wanted to kind of put a magnifying glass on just regular people and try to prove that I'm not weird. Everyone's kind of weird. But ironically, I was the guy playing all these weirdos. But yeah, I think some of these characters came from particularly my family. So I played Mary Ledbetter, who was the old lady, and that was based on my mum. And I think a lot of people can relate to the older generation females who are strong-minded and really a backbone for New Zealand because you don't F with them.
Are you on Twitter?
How dare you? I've never done drugs in my life. The rural kind of dude, Bill Napier, who's the ranger, who knows a lot about plants and trees and outdoor stuff, but really socially is inept. And growing up and working in the army and some of the jobs that I had, I came across a lot of males that were definitely that kind of Kiwi mentality of she'll be right and this is the way things are and there's no other way to look at it. So that's where I got him from. In each of these characters, there's still the essence of me inside that is not mean-spirited and has a sense of optimism and just wants everyone to get along.
Filming Short Poppies, I discovered how hard acting is, even when you're just acting as you. I wasn't good at it, and it gave me a real appreciation for what people like Rhys can pull off. And for some reason, now somehow we've both ended up here in America.
What do you find yourselves missing about America when you're in New Zealand?
Oh, tacos. The ease of going to a restaurant and someone parking your car for you.
That's something it took me a long time to get used to, the idea of valeting. I avoid it. I'm not going to, what? This seems weird. It took me so long to start doing that. But then that's just what you do here, certainly in Los Angeles.
Yeah, look, we embraced that really quickly because you just pull up to the restaurant and you just get out of your car and some dude takes it. It is weird.
What's something when you're here that you miss about New Zealand? What are you jonesying for about New Zealand when you go back?
The outdoors and Vegemite.
I could easily say the food as well. I'm a fish and chips guy and you just can't get that here. But the other thing I really miss about home is the feeling of being in a village, the feeling of coming back to the Shire, because we are all in on it back there. That has negatives and positives because we end up yelling at each other more and can be annoying. But there's that sense of being a Kiwi. That kind of feeling never leaves your head. So when you go home and you take that first breath of beautiful New Zealand fresh air and you go, oh my gosh, I'm home. And then someone goes, hey bro, do you want a flat white?
In case you're wondering, a flat white is a popular coffee invented in New Zealand. Australians will try and tell you they invented it. They're wrong. And as you can probably tell, we're all sort of torn between the good things in New Zealand and the good things in America, the bad things in America and the bad things in New Zealand. For Rosie, part of what appealed about America in the end was just how there's no tall poppy syndrome. Americans are somehow immune to it. For their kids, Theo and Finn, that was a big bonus to the United States.
When Finn was maybe 6, that was when I really realised that this was going to be a good place to bring up our children, because he came home from school and he goes, Mum, I was the best in math today. I went, maths? I think he went math. And I realised that over here, rather than everyone being equal, it's okay to tell kids they're the best in the class every now and again. It's okay to be that person who is the tall poppy and be celebrated because it makes the kids feel really good about themselves. Yeah. That's not to say that it doesn't work the way it works in New Zealand. It's just I felt as a mother, I wanted my kids to be able to hear that.
And for me right now, it was just good to be able to hear someone say maths, to say it the correct way. And as wonderful as it is hanging out with Americans, as a Kiwi, nothing really beats being around other Kiwis. And various Kiwiisms are what Rhys has always brought to his work. From Flight of the Conchords to Short Poppies, The X-Files to Wrecked. I mean, the guy's just been cast in Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, and my money is on a New Zealand accent up in space. And if not that, it'll be something surprising and a bit weird and probably funny.
We have a great sense of humour, and we just don't take life too seriously, and we're very inventive and courageous people. And I think that's what you see in those shows. Guys that are willing to get out there and give it a go and probably not succeed, but have a laugh along the way and not upset anybody. And I think that's the New Zealand spirit. And, you know, now and again, one of us will conquer Mount Everest, or one of us will invent flight before the Wright brothers. Look it up.
Yeah, Mr. Rhys Darby.
We can't forget your reporter voice.
Oh.
What? I don't think I've ever heard you sound so excited. Your pitch was higher than it normally is.
Yeah. I started in that newsroom straight out of university, and the advice I was given was to be, I don't know, it was probably bad advice, to be like a bigger version, like a more hyped up version of what you normally are.
It sounded like a fun impression of a reporter.
Yeah, I think I was trying to do reporter, and I was on the late night news, and so I'm just trying to think. I'm going to try and read like my script for that intro and how I
that
did.
Voice. That was insane. I could. It was like seeing Colin Farrell in The Penguin, where like you can see it a little bit, and I could hear you a little bit in it, but it was.
But then it's lost entirely.
Yeah, of like, well, David would never sound that happy or that loud or that high pitched.
I also did a very intense sign off at the end of my stories, but I'm just gonna.
Yeah, try it.
Okay, so I'm just taking myself back. I'm 20 years old. 21 in a voiceover booth in New Zealand.
Let's go straight to camera there for you.
Okay. I'd be like, it's weird. This is like time travel. I'm David Farrier, a New Zealander accidentally marooned in America, and I want to figure out what makes this country tick. Now, I have to admit, despite getting to make this show with my handsome friend Rob, sometimes I feel outnumbered and metaphorically outgunned by Americans. Like that?
I think that maybe you could adopt that persona occasionally for this show.
Listening back to it was like on those old clips was rough. I found it really hard.
I can imagine.
But I thought you'd enjoy that, and I'm glad you did.
I enjoyed that probably more than I should have.
You got confused over some accents in there a few times. I think you thought I said picking instead of parking.
I thought it was packing the
packing,
car.
not parking,
like,
parking, not packing.
You guys have really got out of touch where you're talking about people packing your car
like,
for you.
You're like, what are you talking about? So what happens when you get New Zealanders together? I think our New Zealand accents get even more New Zealand.
But parking the car. Valet parking. Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember for me, I think when Rhys, he got a bit part, he played like a monster of the week in the new X-Files when that came out. And just seeing him in that just made me go, holy shit, like this Kiwi is in like every bit of pop culture. He was a character in The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers. It's crazy.
It's cool how impactful something like that is to you no matter where you're from. Like I had that growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. Like Fall Out Boy was a local band that played the VFW, and I remember like when they started getting bigger and we'd see them on Jimmy Kimmel Live, just
like holy shit,
how big of a deal it was that this was attainable for someone that we just knew from this town.
Yeah, because the default is, right, you're in a place and the idea is we're going to be here forever and it's impossible to do anything else. And when you see someone do that stuff, you're reminded of like, oh, I can do other things.
And just how big the world is.
Yeah, completely.
I think is the other piece of it.
It's a different thing to what you're talking about, but it's what Tim said at the beginning is we've got a thing in New Zealand where we don't really give a shit about what anyone is doing until a bigger country gives them the thumbs up.
Yeah.
But then eventually we also turn on them. So like when like Lorde in New Zealand, before America gave her like the approval, everyone was just like, oh, it's some musician. America gives the approval, it's like, oh my God, this is our main thing. We love this. And then a few years go by, an album or two comes out, and then New Zealand goes, oh no, you're too big now. Like,
you're
come
no
back.
longer an
icon. Yeah, we're going to level you. So we have this very unusual psyche about people leaving and about fame, and that's a really weird thing to see.
It was nice to reminisce on just how massive HBO was in that era too. Everything they put out was just so good and curated.
Yeah.
Before it was a streaming platform, and
totally,
you didn't have this like selection.
Yeah, that opening
things.
sting for every show was like this stamp of approval. It's like anything that followed was going to be amazing. And you compare that now with like certain streamers that you start up and you're like, it's just full of junk.
Yeah, I don't know
HBO was like a stamp of approval.
Yeah. It's hard when you open your catalog to a streamer like that to then give it as much credibility as HBO had at that time.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything they were going to put out, you knew was going to have a level of quality that you could trust.
And I feel like HBO did that. And then there was kind of this era of like prestige TV.
Showtime kind of followed.
Showtime. And now I think we're back now in a kind of a time at the moment of there being a lot of really average TV. Like there's good TV, but it's not memorable. It's like I've watched entire shows. I don't remember what happened. We're in this kind of place at the moment where like the quality like technically is good.
There's just too much.
There's too much stuff.
I do feel like HBO though is still maintained for their originals.
Let's go Max. Yeah, Max.
Yeah,
now.
Max is maintained because you have Succession, you have Penguin. Like you do have a lot of really solid shows.
I have more confidence going to Max than I do going to other streaming services. It sounds like we're doing an ad for Max. No. But it is good. It is good.
They're also only putting out like 2-3 original shows.
They're not pumping
season.
out 20 a week.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch a show called Carnivale?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We've talked about this.
Yeah. I've got the DVD set of that still.
Same.
Yeah.
Carnivale, I feel like if you haven't watched it, seek it out and watch it. It's, for us, I think we probably love it because we were raised religious. It's basically about these, a traveling circus / kind of freak show. And it's got this really hard to explain sort of the antics of this freak show, but also it's got this like brewing spiritual battle between good and evil that like brews up, and it just gets so epic, and the bad guy is so good.
And it was in New Zealand, right? It's another New Zealand show.
God, no. Not New Zealand. I wish. That's you doing a deadpan where I'm like, do you actually think this? Am I meant to? What's going on here?
The Wild West of New Zealand.
So yeah, HBO is great. Flight of the Conchords is great. It's also very funny listening back to our old podcast where we had Taika Waititi basically saying, I've got this new like movie coming out, like a mockumentary. That was pretty trippy. Which is now its own series on FX.
Which I loved that movie though.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And of course, Rhys was in it. He played the werewolf. God, yeah, Rhys, he's been in everything.
I did want to just also acknowledge how good tacos are here.
They're so good.
I mean, I'm sure they're better in Mexico.
Just New Zealand is, I think we're lucky in LA. Just New Zealand Mexican food. There may be some amazing Mexican place I haven't been to, but generally Mexican food, you don't go to New Zealand for that.
I think that's one of my favorite parts of America is just the cuisines of like you have this melting pot of every different kind of cuisine.
It's the best.
And even just like subsects within it where like you've got pizza from different origins.
I mean, you love your food and you're pretty much in heaven in this country.
And then it's interesting too to like see that you can't get really good Chicago pizza in LA.
Right.
Like people try.
Is that the deep Chicago?
The deep dish.
The deep dish stuff.
So then
disgusting.
Like, it's not disgusting, but
it
like there's something different. There's
Yeah.
something different than how they make it there.
Yeah.
So then I imagine that's kind of like all food in New Zealand.
Wow. Wow.
No, I don't. But
you just turned a whole country against
I'm kidding,
you.
I'm kidding.
There's 5 million people coming to you right now.
No, it's more that it's hard. Like I can acknowledge that even within the United States that it's hard to make good New York pizza across the country. So I can't imagine then how much harder it is to try to do different cuisines in island across the world.
Totally. LA is also this microcosm of so many cultures here, all doing certain things like really, really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel very lucky to be here at the moment, just eating the most delicious things.
That's how I feel about Chicago too.
What food do you miss the most from Chicago? Would it be like deep dish pizza? Would that be the thing?
No, I mean, the real thing that I miss the most about Chicago is that you can get almost every different kind of cuisine at every level, where like you get really high end of any cuisine down to like really good hole in the wall.
Yeah, right.
Tacos and stuff are obviously better here than there. But yeah, you've got like Rick Bayless, like super high end Mexican food there though too. It's just the variance, which I think again is what I like so much about America and its food in general.
One thing I have noticed is that as you drive across like the middle of America, that's when food starts to like dry up. Like when you're in suddenly the middle of nowhere, sometimes then it gets a bit like it's not that.
Yeah.
But in those big thriving centers, it's like everything.
Yeah. You're getting more chain food. And I think we took a little bit of heat for saying that in our Olive Garden episode, so we don't have to repeat it.
No, double down. Double down. Rhys Darby. I was just going through his Wikipedia page and he's been in like so much stuff.
Yeah, Calvin's been watching Jumanji's, all of the Jumanjis.
Oh, really?
Recently,
yeah. He was in Modern Family, Voltron, Series of Unfortunate Events, Jim Jeffries Show, Venture Bros, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's insane. Okay. Feedback. Should we do some?
Let's do some feedback.
I had a lot of people, when I posted the clip from YouTube, commenting, and some people still not being able to find the podcast. Like people would say things like, is it on some streaming service? Luminary. And I was like, I don't know what Luminary is. So I went to Google, I typed in Luminary, went to the site. There was another search box. I typed in Flightless Bird, and it was there straight away. I said to that person, I just replied saying, I went to Luminary, I typed in Flightless Bird, and there it was.
Yeah, I'm sure you said it that nicely.
I did. But then someone else responded to me, Catherine, saying, I had a conversation with someone just yesterday that millennials or younger Gen Xers are the only generation that learned the fine art of Googling. It sounds like a silly statement, but I stand by it. We learned how to do research online in school, whereas younger folks are so used to receiving information through social media, and older folks don't necessarily have the opportunity to develop those skills either. It's interesting, frustrating, and makes me look very smart in front of my coworkers. But I think they raise a good point. Like, I talk about people not knowing how to search sort of as a joke.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that there's a lot of people out there that can't search. They just, unless it's given to them in the moment, like in the Instagram post, they don't know how to get it. And obviously people listening to this show have got it.
Yep.
But just to those people, it's an interesting thing to be aware of. Like, people can't search anymore.
I mean, I guess there is an art to the Google search.
The way you type things, like maybe adding a keyword on.
Yeah.
Like if you search for Flightless Bird, you'll get a lot of actual birds.
Yeah.
Whereas Flightless Bird podcast.
There we go.
You're good. But no, it's like, in spreading the word about the show, it's been a funny thing. Like the questions you get are wild to me.
Did you ever use the website?
Ask Jeeves?
Nope. Let me Google that for you.
That's good. Yeah, that's a level of passive aggressiveness.
That seems so much like what you would do, though.
I'm almost there. I like to explain it to people. I'm like, get your keyboard, type in these words.
Well, should we tell people what Let Me Google That for you is? It was, so it was a website where you would type the search query in, and it would give you a link, and it would take you to the link, and it basically walked you through going to Google, searching it. And you had to watch it search for it, and then it hit search, and then it just gave you all the results.
Yeah, let me Google that is still there. Yeah, letmegoogle.com. If you're passive aggressive like me, it's a good thing to send to friends. Okay, a lot of feedback to the Mysterious Sound episode from last week. Zed said, I went from funny, that guy looks a lot like the Leroy I know, to that is the Leroy I know. Not directly friends, but a lot of mutuals since his bandmates went to my school. I can relate to the pain of interference, thankfully not to this level. I'm an audiologist that does evoked potential recordings of muscle and brain activity, and for the first half of the year, we'd randomly get horrible artifact ruining my results. We tried changing cables, different positions in the room. We ended up moving to a room with a Faraday cage for other reasons, but we eventually found out the issue was a server on the other side of the room. Matt said, the real story is how Leroy built something useful from a conspiracy theory. Opens up all kinds of philosophical questions. Without the information people gathered and refined, this wouldn't have been possible without doing all of that work. Happy accidents. Magic Roast said, it's becoming a massive issue, not just cell towers, but radio frequency interference in general. Even LED lights, aka many of the world's street lights, emit radio frequency. My dad is a ham radio guy here in New Zealand. He operates on the public frequency that allows you to talk to geezers all around the world. He reckons it's easier to talk to people in Greenland than in Auckland due to all the RF. Heck, even in my own home, there's 6 cell phones, 5 Wi-Fi repeaters, 7 Wi-Fi smart devices, and 4 LED lights in every room. RIP silence.
Yeah. That's about a normal amount of devices.
That's like the way we live now, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. We've got more devices connected to internet than that, probably.
I wonder what it is doing to us. Like, it can't be great.
I think we need to trust whoever made the technology, that they were
clearly
thorough.
They care about us. They've definitely tested us. They're definitely not out just to make money. Mm-hmm. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's all okay. Stick around for Calvin. We will be back again in exactly 1 week.
Calvin, do you know who Rhys Darby is?
A human?
Very good. Okay, I'm going to show you a photo of him. Do you know this man?
But he's from Jumanji.
Do you like him in it?
There's a couple. I think there's 3, and the space one also is 4.
Anything else you want to say about Rhys Darby?
No. Like and subscribe.